Okay, we have the recording started and we will kick off our new book showcase for 2020, 2024. Uh, I know a few of the books are end 2023, a few are coming up towards the end of the year. I have a new book as well, but we'll keep mine to the end. And if we have time, we will do it. If not, we will cover that in the next showcase. But I'm excited for everybody's book. And as we all know, for those of you who are specifically new, Matwaala is about being drunk in poetry and community, right? I never like to forget that. And Vinita and Zena, Matwala, right? If you look up, that's really what it means. And that's how beautifully the name came together. The representation on this panel and all our panels is a salute to our mission. We've done a lot of things with other, not we are of course South Asian focused, but we've done a lot of events and will continue to do a lot of events with other communities that are traditionally marginalized as well. We are proud of you and your book babies. We know how hard it is to write. Write is of course hard, but it's harder than what happens after that. And so, thank you to all the publishers who brought these books to the world. And congratulations to all of you. And Zena and Benita, welcome to the Matwala family. I do want to, before we jump in, take a moment to just remember our dearest Keki Darawala, and dedicate this session to him. Many of us on this call have either been directly or indirectly touched and influenced by Keki. I've personally been guided, mentored, and he is the kindest poet, but as we all know, multifaceted as a poet and policeman and a mentor and a guide. And Vinita, I saw Usava's great tribute that's just come out. If everybody has not seen, Vinita runs a journal called Usava, and they just did a very timely dedication to Keiki. So I was reading that last night, Vinita. So thank you for doing that. There is not enough we can say about him. The one thing he would have liked is for us to gather in poetry. That's what he did. We launched, I think some of you were on what Usha brought together, the anthology, the festive for Keiki, a couple of weeks ago, maybe couple of months ago. It was probably July mid, and Keiki was on the Zoom call. He couldn't contribute and speak to it, but he listened to many of us reading our tributes and our contributions to that for him. Kavita, I think you were on that call as well. I also reached out to, if you follow India Today, the magazine, they do some beautiful photo features, photo essays. We'd reached out to them. Usha and I had to say, hey, would you like to do a photo essay on Keki Darawala? And they did want to, but unfortunately, timing wouldn't have it. So, irrespective, we will dedicate today to him, and let's remember him as we read our work and poetry. So here's to Keki. Keki G, Keki Sir, Keki Darawala. Different people call him Keki Uncle. Different people call him in different ways. So remembering him and remembering all our ancestors in poetry, we are because they were, and that's how poetry continues. Let's start with, I will alter a little bit, and if that's okay with all of you, I thought I wouldn't spend time doing bios. We all know each other, and let the poet speak for itself. But I did spend some time just looking at all your collections. I have most of them. Those that I didn't, I will order, and we should all try and order each other's books. So while we go through the reading, please put the link to your book within the chat, so that we can all try and order our collections and make our Matwala library large and looming. I will say, Zilka, we'll start with you.
Right.
And the collection, Sweet Malida, is about the Ben Israeli Jews in India. I've heard and sat with Zilka on a couple of different readings, and it's beautiful work. I do have it in my library, Zilka,
Okay.
as well. If you have the book, please hold it up. But it's a multi-layered, rich sensory, and remembering Zena, our panel It is about food and poetry as well, along with the history and legacy of our ancient ancestors and communities like the one that Zilka belongs to. With that, Zilka, over to you. Share your book on the screen if you would like, and then let's spend around 6 minutes per poet. So
Right.
please time yourself accordingly so we are respectful of everybody being able to contribute as well.
Okay. Hi, Kashiana. Hi, everybody. Thank you to Matwaala. Thank you to Usha and Pramila for always bringing us together. And thank you for your kind words, Kashiana, and for including me in that particular panel. Um, I just want to begin with a short few lines to dedicate to Keki Daruwala, whom I never met but always admired. And then I'm going to read something from my book. This is from Map Maker. And I consider myself a voyager, so this drew me in. Perhaps I'll wake up on some alien shore in the shimmer of an aluminum dawn to find the sea talking to itself and rummaging among the lines I've drawn, looking for something. A voyager, perhaps, gnarled as a thorn tree in whose loving hands these map lines of mine, somnambulant, will wake and pulse and turn to shoreline sand. So gorgeous, so beautiful. All right. I'm going to share poems from my book, Sweet Malida, which was published in February in the US, and I'm so proud to say it will be published in India in November through Piparan Books and distributed through Penguin, the same publisher as Dear Vinita and Kavita's fabulous book that's coming out, and I'm so excited to celebrate Nissim Ezekiel as well. All right, so I'm going to just jump in. I'm going to read the title poem, Sweet Malida, a very straightforward rendition of a very simple dish. Sweet Malida, a mix of water-softened, flattened rice, sugar, dried fruits, nuts, was a dish made for Shabbat or for breaking our fasts. Cooling, light on the palate, and to the body and spirit, it was welcome in the heat of day or night. We had many foods in common with our Muslim, Christian, and Hindu neighbors, and we often celebrated together their festivals or ours. I relished particularly fresh coconut, the regional staple, its milk or its flesh added to almost every dish. But this was to me the best way to eat it, finely grated by my mother's hands, left unsweetened, sprinkled haphazardly on the malida, juicy threads with a fleck of stubborn brown kernel here and there that sometimes crunched in your teeth like sand, and you winced and you swallowed it, knowing that there was no simpler or purer or truer form than that. And I'm going
Beautiful.
to thank you. And
I
somehow
always
made
like
me a
that
little
poem.
teary when I read it today.
Oh, Zilka, I've heard you
Remembering.
read that probably 3, 4 times, and every time it gets me. It's beautiful.
Thank you,
Yes.
Kashiana. I got a bit teary today. I don't know, thinking of my mother, perhaps. Thank you. All right, I'm going to jump into The Angels of Konkan, which records my imagining what it might have been like for these people, my ancestors, who, in one of the theories, they were supposed to have been shipwrecked on the Konkan coast, south of Bombay. And the approximate date was 175 BCE. There are several theories, but I'm going with this theory and then imagining what it might have been like. The poem is written in couplets with an aside each time with the thoughts of perhaps what the survivors were thinking. From tumbled sands and shattered bark, blurred shadows dragged us. Where were we? They dried our battered bodies, bound our wounds, clothed us in woven cotton, fed us warm food with their hands. We could not name then. And as Elijah ate of bread and flesh, and the ravens gave him, so also we ate and drank of the cool water brought from brooks. Who were these healers? Then in fields of grass near the sea, we buried our dead, the ones we found. Where are they now? Set gravestones to remember. They let us pray as we wished, and giving thanks to Adonai. Learn the craft of oil pressers, or did our tribe know it already? Ate what our laws permitted, and praising this vast green land, its rich soil, its rivers, its carts, its grains, its fish and fowl, we blessed the hearts and the living hands of the villagers who saved us. Thank you so much, and thank you for all being here today.
Very nice. Oh, yours.
You're muted, Kashiana.
Thank you. I was saying, Zilka, of course, that's beautiful, and we can. I'm sure I would love us to engage with each other's work and ask questions of each other. Let's keep going through the circle and come back. Zilka, I'm sure there are questions, and all of us like write from our legacies, right? We write into our legacies and we write from our legacies. And yours is so deeply rooted in both the storytelling as well as, and I have a bias towards food and poetry. So thank you for reading that poem. Let's keep moving. Let's move to Ravi Shankar next. The collection that Ravi is launching, and congratulations, is called Tallying the Hemispheres. It is not a poetry collection. It's a collection of essays with a beautiful cover, just like Zilka's. But what else one would expect from somebody like Ravi, except for the essays to be as poetic as well? Throughout this collection, he asks us to look with greater thoughtfulness at the world around us and marvel and revel at the breadth of knowledge, right, that it gathers. So I'll let Ravi speak to it a little more. We did do a little to and fro about, oh, poetry, Matwaala, new book showcase, and then we said, well, doesn't matter. A, Ravi is a Matwaala member, and B, what would these essays be but poetic? So Ravi, with that, over to you. And congratulations.
Thank you so much, Kashiana. It's so great to see everyone. Thank you, Zilka. I love hearing those poems. I'll just read you a very small thing since we were talking about Keki, who I knew for years as well, about his work, and then I'll just read a few poems that are not in here. But there's an essay in here. There's a collection about the subcontinent specifically, and there are many essays about Rukmini Bahanayar and some of the Sangam era poets, and
wow.
one essay here that is about Keki, and I'll just read you this little thing that he says here.
Oh, that's great.
Yes, Keku Daruwala is both a prose writer and a poet living in Delhi. Some of his accolades, but he's one of the few poets of his generation who stayed relevant and produced, like Yeats or Stevens, some of his strongest work late in life. In the face of the imperial march of visual culture and the attendant shrinkage of the attention span, he remains undeterred in his pursuit of poetry, as this comment he made in the Daily Star indicates. And this is Keiki. I just wanted to have his voice in among us. One should not move away from poetry, for much of our aesthetics comes from poetry. Religion started with poetry, thought started with poetry. The epics, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, the Iliad. If you believe in the occult, when the Devi descends, she descends on the shaman who has also been reciting slokas. I've written essays on science and poetry and religion and poetry. There must have been a time when science or knowledge was all combined in one man or one lady. Poetry is literally God-given. It can't be put aside because people have taken to the TV or computer or magazines. So, and then I go on to talk about a couple of Keki's poems very closely. So it's nice to have his spirit among
great.
us.
That little phrase, poetry is God-given. Isn't that why we are all here? And I feel like I need a little magnet or a sticker of that phrase on my desk. So, thank you.
And then I'll just read you three short new poems, and then we can kind of pass along. So these are just from a manuscript in progress. Some of these are exploring some ancient forms. Of course, in the Vedas, we have so many poetic forms. And in America, we're only taught about the sonnet and the villanelle. The only Asian form maybe is the haiku. So this first form is actually a Japanese form called the tananga. And you'll hear that it's in quatrains and every line rhymes. So this is called Everything Hits at Once. Despite the morning doom scroll, the oat smelling of egg roll, a supermassive black hole emits rays that won't console. The price of gas keeps rising, K-pop is mesmerizing, CRISPR for hybridizing, chilled drinks for energizing, unmanned drones ravage Ukraine, noxious needles hitting vein, Putin, like Saddam Hussein, leaves behind scarves of bloodstain. What brings you pain sears my brain, flame retardant thin membrane, plastic surgery for eye strain, Jen just scared of the mundane, plushies for merchandising to quell future uprising, models in advertising lip syncing while capsizing, sound escaping the keyhole, grime, trap, dubstep, neo soul, I'm clear broth and you the bowl, despite the morning doom scroll. So that
Very
is a
nice.
little
Beautiful.
form of the Tananga. And you can see it kind of cycles back around. Um, this next one is a more common form. That's the terza rima, of course, popularized by Dante, which is in tercets, 3-line stanzas, and the first and third line rhyme, and then the second line becomes the rhymes for the next one. But I think the subject is very different than what Dante might have talked about. This is called Saturday Morning Reruns, and it has a little epigraph from Karen Yamashita's Tropic of Orange. No single imagination is wild or crass or cheesy enough to compete with the collective mindlessness that propels our fascination forward. Saturday Morning Reruns. Hi-ya! Slobbers Hong Kong Fooey, slurping a similar sound. A new kid clobbers me on the neck from behind. Chop suey! Cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers, Dick Tracy and Joe Jiu-Jitsu. And guess who I always was? Behind the castle drawbars, peering intently so as not to misconstrue what to do, I wouldn't play unless asked, then deftly would transform, peekaboo, into stereotypes from a cartoon broadcast. Haji Singh with a jewel in my turban, or over by the squishy machine, miscast again as Apu by some drunk on bourbon slapping my back. Thank you. Come again? I grew up in Northern Virginia, suburban as a kid on growing pains. No campaign against Asian immigrants works as well as Odd Job and James Bond to create disdain, or Long Duck Dong to craft an absurd shell of masculinity into which we're shunted. Outsourced a call center sitcom? Go to hell. Yes, my little annoyance at this, and I think that roles for Asian actors are increasing, but not as much as we would probably like.
Fantastic, fantastic.
And I'll just finish this one on a more somber note. This is a poem about loss, the loss of a beloved in some way, and this is called Phantom Limb, and will be my last poem. Thank you all. It's great to be here. Phantom Limb. Were you a hand missing from my body, it would be mere pathophysiological loss. When I feel genuine pain, you, a part of me that's missing, still grasp the door across town from me. And yet, I can't lift a finger to find my lost fingers. The hand is gone. The pain remains, something the maimed will feel for the rest of their lives. How inhuman the brain, constantly reminding us of how much we have lost and will lose, even as we lose breaths each day. Stay, please stay, I whisper, then howl, j'accuse, in the Emile Zola sense of the terrifying plain truth. Your hand and mine made my hand whole. No pharmacological or behavioral treatment can ever help me understand what happened to us. We will both try, but we may find no prosthetic can replace our intertwining fingers, interknit bodies, how lovingly we arrayed interior space. Now I tremble. Louise Gluck, who passed today, once wrote, "Death cannot harm me more than you have harmed me, my beloved life." eternally under a knife, the amputee. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
That ending, though, that was great, Ravi. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Zaina. Zaina has a new collection, and Zaina is also the poet laureate of Alexandria. Like I said, a dear friend. Her collection is called, and I would love you to hold it up as well, Zaina, so we can see that beautiful cover and share the context of how you got to those colors. The collection is called Some Things Never Leave You. And I love what James Cruz said, Zaina, about your work, which is even as they long for the color and the taste of lost places, making a new home in the fullness of each moment, seeking justice, seeking honor, they inspire with wonder and awe at every turn. And Zaina, that's you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate your generous introduction, Kashiana. I'm delighted to be part of Matwaala's new books showcase. What a great uplifting of poetry and community. And thank you so much for gathering us and your constant generosity, Kashiana. Here's a little bit about me so you can have some context to my poems. My parents are Palestinian refugees who fled their homes in 1948. So I'm from Southwest Asia. So I sort of fit in this context. They fled to Syria and then to Lebanon. And I had my childhood in Lebanon, in Beirut. And we immigrated to the US when I was 10 years old. So I'll read my first poem. It's one based on memories from my childhood. I think many children who live in developing countries could write such a poem. It's titled Just Like That. When our neighbor's son was gunned down in Beirut, when streets flooded after monsoon-like rains, my parents would only say, Inshallah, things will get better. At the beach when I was 8, a flurry of people rushed into the water, then returned, somber, carrying a young man's limp body on a raft. Once, as my mother's nimble fingers braided my long black locks, I watched a war unfold on TV. Some nights I fell asleep reciting my parents' words, Inshallah, things will get better, often thinking that maybe I, too, could come face to face with a gun or a bomb from the sky, storms that would sweep away my home, or whirlpools as I swam in the sea. And just like that, my life would end, a little brown body washed ashore.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I have so many beautiful memories of my childhood in Beirut. Is everybody muted?
We have some background noise, so if anybody is unmuted, could you please go unmute? Zilka, that was beautiful. Please keep going. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So my childhood in Beirut, I have a lot of memories, really good ones. One came to me about an aunt who was related to us by marriage. She was the wife of my mother's paternal uncle. In Arabic, and I'm sure in many other languages, we distinguish between paternal and maternal relatives, and we often call people by that particular relation and not by their actual name. Mart Ammi, wife of my paternal uncle. As a child, I had no idea of her name, just that my mother called her Mart Ammi. She was a kind and smiling figure, the Arabic welcoming words ahlan wa sahlan always on her lips. She filled our bellies like a bountiful rain nourishes a garden. At her table, we enjoyed deftly rolled grape leaves, the myriad ways she could envision cooking an eggplant, okra, cilantroed, and garlicked just so. She would hug me against her soft bosom as if I were the girl she never had after 4 sons. One summer when I was 9, I sneaked out of our apartment and walked the 2 Beirut city blocks to her place alone. She sat me down with a glass of lemonade fragrant with rose water, grinning. Then she told me to get home quickly. My clandestine escapade became our secret. It was 14 years after we emigrated to the United States that I saw her again on a visit to Lebanon when I finally learned her first name. But out of habit, I continued to call her Martammi, the moniker that spelled how she fit into the patriarchal order of things. She insisted on accompanying me as I traveled to Syria by taxi so I wouldn't cross the border alone. We spent hours together, the years between us evaporating like a cloud of steam over a soup pot. We dined on mezza and shish kebab, drank arak with relatives, stayed up late, chatting. She got tired and admitted shyly that she was making threads of her speech. Our merry unraveling that evening is one of my fondest memories of Martammi. Her signature curly, shiny hair, always tightly pulled away from her face, had started to slacken. During our time together, I saw a woman jolly and vulnerable, one who knew how to navigate around border officials, score a good bargain in the souk, opine about wars and inflation and refugees, narrate detailed stories about aunts and uncles long deceased. Our depth of kinship had crisscrossed geography and time and language, our family history of perpetual goodbyes. Thank you. And this is my last poem.
So moving.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This last poem is called A Language for Colors. As an immigrant to the US, I've often felt like I lived, in 2 cultures and 2 languages and between them also. And although I used to view these spaces as sometimes conflicting, I learned that my experiences have been profoundly enriching to, my values and my worldview. And I continue to wonder how one transmits a cultural identity to the next generation. I ask myself, have I given my 2 children a good understanding of the culture that I grew up with? And what will my grandchildren know and appreciate about our heritage and our family story? So here is a language for colors. Asfar, she would say, pointing at a yellow tulip. And the color of grass? Akhdar. My young daughter had mastered not only the colors, but also the throaty KH, 2 letters in English that equal 1 in Arabic. I would tell her it's the same sound as in khamse, khubz, sabanich, 5, bread, spinach, and my favorite name, Khalid, immortal. I once confessed to a friend wistfully that I would not name my son Khalid because Americans couldn't pronounce it. Now I wonder about such wisdom. Even my 8-year-old could constrict her throat muscles the right way to say Khalid, immortal like an ancient olive tree, a flame that never abates, a mother's love. This spring, I saw a patch of double hybrid tulips, asfar tinged with akhdar, and thought of my daughter's satisfied grin at learning those words thousands of miles away from her grandparents' home in Palestine. Here we are, hybrid Americans, living between 2 languages and speaking in colors, splendid flowers in a distant field.
Just beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And that poem is for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Zaina?
Yeah.
That's like we could
Stunning,
all
stunning.
live in that poem. Beautiful.
Thank you. A lot of people tell me that this resonates
Yeah.
for so many people who have these
Yeah.
hybrid identities. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Zaina. Sophia isn't here yet, and she might come in. She had some work thing this morning, and she said she might be here. So we'll keep moving forward. Let's move to Meenakshi. Meenakshi, welcome. Meenakshi's collection is called Symphonies of Life. And for those of you who do not know, Meenakshi is a beautiful painter, artist as well. Symphonies of Life is a testament to the endurance of human spirit, and it invites readers to embark on the poetic odyssey by none other than somebody who's a poet and a painter. And through her paintings as well as her poetry, she tries to transcend the ordinary and enter the sublime. Meenakshi, welcome and congratulations on your book. And let's hear some poems.
Thank you so much, Kashiana. I also would like to thank Usha and Matwaala for organizing to showcase new books and also including my book, this one. Thank you also Pen Prince Publisher who published this book from Kolkata. You are right, Kashiana. When I was reading your thing on the email, you said when we listen to each other's verses, we weave a magic. And that is true. We spread so many different hues listening to all different people, you know. I just wanted to say a few things about the title of my book, Symphonies of Life. Symphonies of Life, it came when I was going over my poems, you know, it came very naturally to me. Symphony has high note, low note, and so does my poem, you know. Everybody, and it's not only for me, even though this book is the story of my life, but basically a lot of things talk about many other people. It can be, you know, applied universally. Like, I believe poetry is the one's emotion. And I agree with what William Wordsworth said. Poetry is the spontaneous overflow or powerful feelings. Some of my poems are about loss, love, and longing. And actually, like K.K. Daruwala, like he did, you know, after his wife's death, he started writing more. I think I was reading his thing. And in fact, he also contributed to my mythology, Tapestry of Women in Indian Mythology, which was published in 2022. He contributed and it was so good, you know, was very spontaneous in responding back. So I know a little bit about him. I never had a chance to meet him, but just like him, I also started writing when I lost my husband very suddenly, you know, at a younger age. So it's about loss, but there is always a hope, you know. So even though my poems talk about loss, but there is hope also. So I'll read some of my poems. The Eternal Home. Again, I would like to dedicate this to K.K. Daruwala, even though it's written from a woman's point of view, but it talks about from life's transiency, you know, how everybody has to go one day, but, you know, so it's about life. And a lot of my poems, you know, talk about that thing, you know, transiency of life. And I have quoted quite a few Gita quotes here and there in some of my poems. So the Eternal Home. She lit a diya in front of the Ganesh image on her veranda. She did this every evening for the welfare of her children. She lived alone but continued with her rituals and prayers. Almighty, light the path of all her children wherever they are. The sun was sinking in the womb of the earth. In the diffuse light of the day, she watched the lamp making patterns on the ceiling. Was she that flickering lamp? Not knowing which stroke of breeze would extinguish it. She, the daughter of Aditi, born from the earth, would melt in the elements she came from. Or was she like a river, streaming from the highest peaks of the mountains, pure and white? But as life moved forward, she faced rocks and creeks, hills and valleys, greens and swamps, but made her way. Now, in her silver years, the time would come when her life would merge with the ocean's vastness. She looked at the lamp with its flickering light. Were those patterns on the ceiling a message? Aham Brahmasmi? She smiled. Yes, she was ready to become one with the divinity. Then she would be in her eternal home. Her soul would be a perpetual light, brightening and guiding the path of her children. That's my first poem. Can I read my other poem or do I have
Yes,
time? Okay.
please. Yeah,
Okay.
please.
The second poem is the Saga of the Sagar. So through Sagar, actually, I have, it's like a symbol, I mean, people go through different emotions too, so it's sort of, you can relate it to that. The Saga of the Sagar. Please stop and listen to my story. I'm the sigh of the molten stone and tears of the sky. The earth reached out to me and took me tenderly into its soft lap. You call me profound, deep, but have you listened to my story? There are mountains and valleys and vales of stairs in the hollow chasm of my heart. My heart bleeds fire. When landslides and earthquakes mine my arteries, and I cross my limits to destroy the innocence, then I plead to Mother Earth for comfort and to calm my wrath. Have you seen my tears and joy when my heart was churned during Samudra Manthan? But I was thrilled to defeat the Asuras, causing havoc with the elixir of my cavities. I rescued the Devtas to save the world. Do you know? I'm home to mystery and mysticism. I nurture aberrant plants and foliage, some with medicinal luminosity. I nourish astounding varieties of creatures. Gems and jewels have homes in the dark crevices of my being. Join me, join me in my exhilaration as I welcome and embrace rivers in my abode. Come and read my story that I scroll on the stones. Come and listen to my songs. My waves play. Hark, hear my gentle whisper. I am profound with many stories to tell. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. And is the cover your own painting, Meenakshi?
No, the cover is done by Hiren Roy of Pen Prints introduced. I mean, they had arranged it, but this is a original oil, I think. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
We'll keep moving and come back again for any discussion. I'm going to move next to Kavita, and everybody knows Kavita, the way I like to think of you, Kavita, is the daughter of the father of post-colonial Indian writing in English. That being said, Kavita is a poet extraordinaire in her own right and capability, but she has invested her life in preserving the legacy of none other but the icon called Nizam Ezekiel. Kavita, I cannot imagine. All that comes with great responsibility. And the collection that we are going to celebrate today is called is dedicated to Daddy, and that's what Kavita likes to call her father. She is a loving daughter of her daddy, and we will congratulate her on this beautiful connection dedicated to the poet and father, Nizam Ezekiel. But with that, Kavita, thank you for being here, and congratulations on that great collection. I'm sure many younger generation poets, right, and students of literature will benefit from it. But go ahead, tell us something more about it. Share the cover if you have it, and let's hear you.
Thank you so much, Kashiana. I'll talk about my book later, and I'm so thankful that you have invited me, Usha, Premila, Kashiana, because this is not, my book is not strictly just a book of poems. I'll talk about it later, but first I want to hold up Keki's book. I hope you can all see it. It's House of Words, beautifully done, and I am so proud in a good way of having my little piece included in here. When I started my poetry page, Keki wrote to me, and I've mentioned it here, and that was very special. And then Vinita, who is also my editor, I'll talk about her later, she sent me a recording of Keki reading my poem Loss, which was for my father a couple of years ago at the Mumbai Literature Festival, the Kalagoda Festival. So just a few words from Keki's poem, which I love. The poem was called Mother, and the lines are, When my children ask you things about your childhood, your smile becomes remote and enigmatic. Just fabulous words. I love, because I have poems about my mother, but they don't in any way touch these wonderful words. So Keiki was special to my father, so that's another connection. And Keiki's special to all of us. I didn't know we were dedicating this session to him, but underneath Keiki's book is also my dad's book here, which is my second Bible, Mr. Ezekiel Collected Poems. So I'll talk about my book just very briefly. It's called Nissim Ezekiel, Poet and Father, and it is written to honor the birth centenary of my father. This is the centennial year, 100 years. And 3 years ago, I wanted to write a book and talk to my husband, and he said 2 words. He said, or 3 words. He said, just go ahead. And so that's how the book was born. And then I had been watching Vinita, who's as calm and composed as my dad was. This calmness really runs a little bit in, not a little bit, a lot in the Ezekiel family. I hope I've inherited a little bit of it and the composure. So I selected Vinita. She's here today. And she gave me the space to write from my heart. She did not interrupt me. She did not interfere. And this has been very, very special as an editor. And also my gratitude to Piparan Books, whom I met at Matwaala, actually, when they were doing a special celebration in honor of Salim Piradina, also another friend and a person in my father's circle. And Piparan, Prabhu Guptara was there, and he offered to throw his hat in the ring, as he said. And so I contacted him, and hence he also, like my husband, like Vinita, worked with the manuscript. And as some of you know, or some of you may not know, my name means poem. So my daddy, as I call him, being a poet, but being a Jewish poet, it's very unusual for a Jewish poet to name their children Kavita, and then my sister was Kalpana, which means imagination. So in school, they used to call us poetry and imagination, which was also called us long tongue and chatterbox because we talked a lot. didn't let the teachers teach. So anyway, I thought I'd read a poem about my name, which is called Give Me Oil in My Lamp. It's also published in my book, Nissim Ezekiel, Poet and Father, in which there are about 30 poems, 27, I think. And it's also published in my book, Light of the Sabbath, which was a chapbook in 2021. So
Hey,
give me all.
Kavita, can you hold up? I want everybody to see the cover of Light of the Sabbath. That's a beautiful artistry as well. I have the book. So
Thank you,
thank you. Yes, please
Kashiana.
go
And
ahead.
Kashiana wrote a very nice review, which is on my poetry page. So I appreciate that, Kashiana. Thank you. So this poem is called Give Me Oil in My Lamp. Grandmother took me to the old synagogue, walking down the potholed sidewalks of a noisy Bombay street close to her home, every square inch populated with humanity. The oil lamp in the very old synagogue hung high from the ceiling. For a few rupees, we could keep the light burning. She was afraid to climb the ladder provided by the caretaker in case she missed a step. I was afraid for her too. So he took the donation and lit the lamp. I must cover my head with a handkerchief. She would pray to the prophet Elijah for the oil never to run out. The lamp must never die out. Wanting to know in whose name he could make the receipt, I did not have a Jewish name. Change it for the receipt, she said, matter-of-factly, or the caretaker will get confused. So I went from being called Kavita to Elizabeth. For the sake of a 2-rupee receipt, I really did not want or need. Mother did not want to name me Elizabeth, I recall. It's okay. When you get back home, you can go back to your real name, or your father will be upset, grandmother said calmly. So that's the poem.
Very nice.
And I included it in my book, Nissim Ezekiel, Poet and Father, in the section called the Daddy Poems. because it is about my father. So all the poems included there were somehow mentioned either my father or they were directly dedicated to him. And then the next poem I'm going to read is another short poem called Of Flaws and Gifts. Just a little background to this poem is that when my father went to New York many, many years ago, he knew I loved the Beatles, and I still love them today. I knew every single word of every single song by heart, and he thought that I should know my Shakespeare the same way. But anyway, that was the story. And so he brought me a book of the lyrics of the Beatles. And in the book, he had inscribed to Kavita with faith in her potential. So I hope in some small way, I am fulfilling that potential with my book, with my poetry, with my life, with my calmness. Some of it shared here by my editor, and other people around me don't share it. So it's important to stay calm in this kind of turbulent age. But anyway, here's the poem Of Flaws and Gifts. It was published in a magazine called Different Truths. This is after the late poet Nissim Ezekiel's poem, I Met a Man Once. I was born to a man who could not drive a car, typed with 2 fingers, never learned to use a computer. His critics got him for that one. Not knowing what he wanted in a clothing store, needing advice on color, style, and type, rejoiced when he discovered the secret to boiling an egg, simply because he thought there was a secret to it. That's a true story. Was lost when it came to banking. How many zeros in 1,000? 10,000? Where to sign the check? Worldly affairs were beyond him, his feet firmly planted in the air. I knew this man intimately. A gentleman, a kind man, a simple man, eyes that twinkled like stars on a clear night, magnanimous with money and time, faithful mentor to young poets who could not bear to watch a child crying or a prostitute being beaten up, who didn't have many shirts, but would give the shirt off his back to anyone in need or not in need. Yet he knew how to write a poem with words that could shimmer the moonlight, make the sun shine brighter, ripple the water, sparkle the stars, tell stories that would rock your world with laughter, praise God for his gifts, and admit his failures. I know that man well, for he was my father. I have his flaws in my genes, and perhaps a little bit from his gift of words. The daily fragrance of his poems sweetens my heart with tenderness. Thank you. So those are my poems, and that's my wonderful listening to everybody. It's just been amazing, and we'll talk about it when we have our discussion. Thank you, Kashiana, again.
Kavita, thank you. Beautiful as always. Not only are the poems beautiful, but your reading and your calmness in your reading is beautiful too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on. We will move to Shikha next. Shikha's poem is a collection, Anandi by Joshi. If you haven't seen it, again, a stunning collection. I'm going to pause for, yep, we can see that now. It's just beautiful. The colors, the artwork, the images are beautiful, and the collection is a unique collection as well. I'll let Shikha speak more to it, but it's about a life narrated through poetry. Shikha uses persona poems to traverse the humble beginnings and medical achievements of Anandi Gopal Joshi. I might have got this wrong, so Shikha will correct me, but I read that she traveled from India to the US in 1883 to
Yes,
pursue an
that's
education in medicine. So, and that's who Shikha picked up as the protagonist, became the persona poems, and then did a lot of research to also kind of adjust the narrative from the husband being lionized in her success and capability to actually the central character, which is Anandibai Joshi herself. So Shikha, over to you. I do have your collection as well. It is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kashiana. And I'd like to thank everyone here. It's great to see all of you and hear your words. And also thanks to Usha and Pramila and Matwala. It's a fantastic community building platform. And I just wanted to say a few words about Keki Daruwala before jumping into this, that unfortunately, I never got the chance to meet him, but he was so kind and generous. With my first book, I had emailed him for a blurb, and I didn't hear from him for like 2 weeks. And I thought, you know what, he's probably busy, and why would he, indulge a newbie like me? But suddenly, bang, I got an email from him with this beautiful blurb. And it was so kind and generous of him. The words that he had to say were just, for someone who was starting out, it was just wonderful. So I will never forget that act of generosity. And I know he's helped countless others, had conversations with countless others. And even though I didn't converse with him in real life, I definitely conversed with his poems. So I'm glad we have that. Uh, so anyway, on now to Anandi Bai Joshi, A Life in Poems. So this has been published in India with HarperCollins, and it is a labor of love. I started it in 2017 because I grew up here, and I was really shocked that we didn't know about historical figures from the past who had come to the United States. It's very difficult to find. So when I Googled who was the first Indian woman to come to the United States, this really riveting photograph popped up of three women, and one was wearing a sari, and she had this really fierce look in her eyes. And if you Google Anandibai Joshi, you will find this picture. And there are three medical doctors, one from Syria, one from Japan, and then Anandibai, who's from India. And I looked at her and I'm like, who is this woman? And then I went down that rabbit hole of research, and what I found out was the most fascinating, riveting story. And every narrative, though I read, said, oh, her husband is the one who brought her to America. Her husband was the one who educated her. And I was like, wait a minute, where is her voice in this, right? So then I did more digging and found out that she was so strong, so mature, so intelligent, and, very strong-willed in many ways, but also very respectful of those around her. But her story was incredible. She sailed all alone in 1883 from Kolkata to New York, and she stayed with an American ally who treated her like her own daughter. So I was like, wow, I want to try and write about her life. And somehow I ended up writing her whole biography because she was only 21 when she passed away. I ended up writing it in poetry, in her voice, so that it would seem that she is narrating her own life, giving her agency back to her. So that's how Anandi Bai Joshi, A Life in Poems came into being. And I'm just going to share a few poems from them, from the book. And I think just to give a little flavor of her life. So the first poem I'm going to share is called Naming, Namkaran, which is, so Anandibai Joshi was born with the name Yamuna, which is a river in India. And people don't really know that because when you get married, you are, at least the tradition at the time was that your husband would give you a new name because now it's a new life, you're in a new family, and you belong to your husband's family. So I wanted to give her old name back to her too and say she was Yamuna before she was anything else. So this poem is called Naming Namkaran. I, is it really true that being named after a river is bad luck, a turbulent life? Are all women rivers then? And tell me the story again of how I came to be a paisley in your belly. Why you named me daughter of the blinding sun, sister of the Lord of death, tumbling down to earth to meet her blue beloved. How I was born the same day as a goddess riverine, whose holy drops the priest sprinkled on my forehead 11 days after my birth, introducing me to this world, whispering into my ear, Yamuna, 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 a contract signed in water, a girl's fate sealed. So This next poem, gives a glimpse into Anandibai's daily life as a young girl, that tussle between wanting to be a child and play freely, yet adhering to traditional patriarchal expectations that were imposed at a very young age. To Touch the Sky, 1873. The sun's shadow swept over my face as I built biceps, drawing water from the well, rope burns on my hands and wrists, and when I complained, there was no time to play. Ai's anger drew welts on my back, her orders a daily refrain. Gather sticks for the chulha, scrub the pakshala. So when I found the zopara empty, I grabbed its chains as if a horse's reins, pumping my legs furiously to see how high I could go. Braids flying, skirt rippling, sun winking, toes trying to touch the sky. My only witness, a green pigeon whose wings I conspired to steal. So Zopara is a traditional wooden swing, and you have different versions in South India and Gujarat, other places, but it was very common for Zopara to be in a courtyard in many Maharashtrian homes. Yeah. And so, I mean, I know I can't narrate her whole history here, but she was married to a widower named Gopal Rao Joshi, a widower who was 16 years older than Anandibai. And he was an overzealously progressive man, and he was instrumental in encouraging her to pursue an education. But at the same time, he was quite violent. He used to beat her up if she didn't study. He was very jealous when she went to the United States and was getting attention. Um, but he was still there and he did encourage her. And it is very problematic, which is what I tried to show in my book as well. And when Anandibai was around 12 or 14, we're not exactly sure, she lost her son when he was 10 days old. And that's what informed her to become a doctor. Yeah. So I want to share a found poem from a letter which Anandibai Joshi wrote to Alfred Jones, who was part of the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania. And here she is sort of like, uh, she's, telling this person how, skilled she is, that she is ready to go to college. So it's called A Plea to Make Herstory. Dear Sir, I beg to be allowed to enter the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania upon any terms pecuniarily consistent with my means. Please trust that my case is exceptional and peculiar. I am pushing forward as fast as I can. I've learned to read and speak in 7 languages: Marathi, my own, Sanskrit, Bengali, Gujarati, Ganari, Hindustani, and English. I have read the histories of England, Rome, Greece, and India. I have been through English grammar and studied through arithmetic. And though I may not meet in all points the requirements for entering college, this determination, which has brung me to your country against opposition of my friends and caste, ought to go a long way. And do I have time for one more poem?
Go for it.
Okay, so the poem which I want to read, it's based on that photograph I'd mentioned in the very beginning. And please do look it up online. It's an arresting photograph. So, back in the day, um, because of the way you dressed, and Anandibai was always in a sari. I mean, you were exoticized. There was this fetish for all things exotic in the West at that time. And so when this picture was taken, you wonder, what was the photographer thinking? And the photographer was almost always a male. And like, how did they feel that here they were, these 3 women in their native clothes? They must have been proud, but they also must have felt that othering. So from that point of view, I wrote this poem. When they ask us to pose for a photograph at the Women's Medical College reception, Philadelphia, 1885. Forgive us if we don't smile. The ocean's scent still on our clothes, the stench of sea. We, visitors of another clime, of warmer lands are we. With pride we wear our native clothes, silks and jewels we proudly don, sari, kimono, headdress of coins with lyre, sash, a handheld fan. No scalpel, stethoscope, or degree. 3 female doctors of foreign pedigree, playing dress-up for Western eyes. In our appearance, they see worlds wild. Forgive us if we don't smile.
Mm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for reading that. Yes, and I did look it up while you were reading. Like we should all see that picture. I can see why that would have triggered a whole thing for you, Shika. Great, and what an inspiration to hear from you. Thank you. Let's move on to Vinita next. Vinita, I'm going to read your own words about Eartha. And what Vinita says is that the earth, in all its wholesomeness, is a message of interconnectedness and interplay of all species and landscapes. We share a biological nexus with other life forms, and it is important to coexist. Eartha is an attempt to explore the commonalities that bind us and fulfill our responsibilities. That's in Vinita's own words. I am a fan and inspired by Vinita, Kavita like you, her calmness and her ability to let you do what you need to do. Has I have under her tutelage worked on a few poems of my own, and I know that those are some of my best pieces as well. So Vinita, thank you for all you do, and let's listen to your work. If you have the book, please share the cover too. And congratulations again. You're on mute, Vinita.
Thank you, Kashiana, for those very, very kind words. And thank you for the Matwaala platform and this exceptional invitation to me to be a part of it. I know mostly diaspora poets are invited here, and I'm so honored to also make it to this platform. And I'm a fan of everybody who's been reading here. I have 3 really important things to say. First of all, we've dedicated this session to Keiki. Keiki was an absolutely marvelous gentleman. He was a fabulous poet. He was a part of my the Open Your Eyes anthology on climate change. And then I also quoted him in my foreword in the next anthology, which is Count Every Breath. And I was privileged to have him launch my book, The Natural Language of Grief, which was the Indian edition of Twilight Language. That happened in 2022. And he traveled almost an hour and a half from Delhi to Gurgaon. And, at that age with all his difficulties. And I was so honored to have him launch that book. So I've had a very, very special relationship with him as a poet. And we really do miss him a lot. The other thing is regarding the Nissim Ezekiel book that Kavita was mentioning. I'm very happy to share that the book is out. We don't have it in our hands as of now, but it has been published and it's available online. So that's a wonderful bit of news. And I'm equally honored and privileged to be the editor of that book, and vice versa to what Kavita was saying. I would say that I'm very, very grateful to her for giving me the space to write a foreword for that book and to make me a part of this project. And thirdly, I can't take credit for the dedication that went out to Keiki through Usawa. I'm not a part of the Usawa team anymore. I couldn't hold on to the commitments because of time issues and everything else. So it was a wonderful dedication to Keiki from Usawa, and I appreciate it greatly, but it would be wrong to take any credit for that. So thank you for reading the small introduction to Eartha in my own words. I'll just read a couple of poems. The first poem that I'd like to read is titled To Orchid as a Verb. To orchid is to recycle coconut husk into soil, drink water from air using a stomata straw, live dangerously, dangling from the ledge of life. And then it is to open up the vortex of the heart, herald a fine art of apricot tongues, on mauve petals, as though to exhibit colors was compensation for not blooming. To orchid is to mimic a narrow, minimal life, yet stay in the game when roses and violets are wilting. It is to belt out stunning disclosures when none were expected. It is to flourish when everyone gave you up for dead, left you untended. To orchid is to take you by surprise, the way a currency note might when spotted in a wallet about to be discarded. The other poem that I'd like to read is titled Himalayan Trek. In the rhododendron lanes, my heavy flesh disintegrates, becomes empty as air, a sliver of dry skin nailed to the door of an emaciated past. Silence is a balm to your metal slapping metal absence, easy to slit the sternum of stoic mountains with a gaze, difficult to stitch the gaping wound. I want to know that I died really well. In sunflowers, we see the sun. In home, burdens. In death, preparedness. Flaky, waxy rivulets of roads lead to anato loneliness. Nothing else. Country roads take me home, Denver sang. In the Himalayas, rice and honor seem to be one. Honey pledges itself to the warm, thick fingers of seekers. Nights are coolants, poured into twice withered, tired calves, ankles, feet. When I travel, I meet myself. Inside lakes and in rivers, rounded stones bathe all life long, drenched in crystal clear water, 365 days, year after year. My thirst, so thirsty, that I wish to become them, feeling nothing but the rush of water. How nice to be a stone.
Beautiful, Vinita, as
Thank
always. Thank you. And thank you for everything that you've done to bring
Thank you.
those anthologies with climate change and the focus on eco poetry. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That brings us to the close. I'd like to close with a few short lines of for Keiki, of course. And I'll read just one poem from my upcoming collection. It's called Witching Hour, inspired by the first year that I spent with my grandson, my newborn grandson. But it's about the witching hour is about the witching hour that newborns have, but it is also about the witching hour of life and the fact that we are all in the birthing house of life. And two people here, Zaina and Vinita, have been kind to be preview readers and have written blurbs for my collection as well. So I'll start with some of my favorite lines for Keiki, of Keiki, which is, migrations are always difficult. Ask any drought, any plague. Ask the year 1947. Ask the chronicles themselves. If there had been no migrations, would there have been enough history to munch on? That's from Keiki's poem, and it's the shortest, most impactful poem one could have, and it connects to Zaina, what you read, a lot of us, Zilka, what you read, Kavita, what you spoke about, right? So it's beautiful, and I always keep that handy. I will read just one poem from the Witching Hour, and it's called How to Collect Blessings Like a Newborn. and it was published in a journal called Braided Way and was nominated for Best of the Net. How to collect blessings like a newborn. Reclaim your ancestors from songs held captive in collarbones. Hold on to their portraits, knuckles of mother, limp of fathers. Soak in crushed sunlight pods. Save specks for a weary winter. Touch transparent skin of just blossomed dandelions. Find pollen left stranded on a butterfly's wings. Carve puzzles of unbroken geographies. Ferment fire, water, and salt in clay pots. Become a window to stare out of. Wake to the poise of a turquoise sky. Be smaller than the ego of a rat. Catalog obsessively. Dance to. Digest facts. Follow evidence. Always curve towards the earth. Be a student of sitting still. Learn a string instrument. Read about Nico Maroro. Whisper, sabr, 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 sabr. Bury poems with my body. Let turmeric stain moist walls. Discover fungi inside tree trunks. Follow chants. Own a Tingsha bell. Listen for their primal voice inside cracking thunder of supine nights. How to collect blessings like a newborn. And we have Sophia. That's great.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Sophia, I know
It was
it was
beautiful.
a rushed morning for you.
I'm so sorry for messing this up. I never do this, but it's
That's
been
okay.
crazy. How are
That's
you?
okay.
My goodness, North Carolina. I'm
We are okay. We are okay, Sophia. We were impacted by the aftermath of the light, the electricity and power, but our area was okay. We escaped. It was bad for 2.5 days, but mostly a lot of rain. Asheville's in a really bad place, in a really tough situation. So
heartbreaking.
thank you for checking. Yes. Sophia, we were about to wrap, but that's great. We would love for you to
Okay.
come in
Well,
and
I'm going to be really brief since I know
yes,
I'm
go
right
ahead.
at the
Yes,
end. And
yes,
so I'll read just one poem and then you guys
yes,
can wrap.
yes, please.
So
Go ahead, Sophia.
actually is the last poem of my collection, Bark Archipelago, and it's called Beloved. Everything will kill you. A newborn blade of grass, a glass raised to your lips, days of the week, hours of the day, minutes of the meeting, stars you see, cannot see, pebble, storm, spitball, stream, cold veins, hands that wash you, skyline, shoreline, hairline, slow line, birth knots marking time, earth, stealth, hearth, art, bread, breaking waves. What's life without that little depth? Everything will kill you. Ask the poets who christened the beloved as assassin. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you so
Of
much.
course. So glad you came in, Sophia. So glad. I would
Thank
not
you.
like that. Yeah, thank you.
I'm so sorry I missed everyone's reading. I hope there's going to be a recording.
Yes, yes.
And
We'll share
hi,
the recording.
Zola. Hi, everyone. Hi, Shika. Hi. Some of you I know and some of you I don't, but hi.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Yeah,
were you
well,
about to finish?
yes, we are just about to wrap. We've all spent time listening as we do in these gatherings, and thank you, everyone. We also all spent some time giving our little dedication and remembering Keiki, Sophia, and it's been beautiful, heartwarming. Kavita read from her daddy poems for the collection that's coming out, for her book that's coming out for our icon, Nizam Ezekiel. So it's been a great morning. I appreciate everybody's presence. I know it's hard to make it on a Saturday morning or an evening, Vinita, like you. I was just keeping fingers crossed. I did not want to cancel or move it because of all the issues I had at home. So I'm glad we were able to do it. And we are looking forward. For those of you who do not know, Matwaala is in its 10th year in 2025. And we've been working behind the scenes to have a festival, a 10th anniversary festival next year. So look forward to that. But again, thank you everybody for being here, and take care of yourselves and be well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.